Doctors who have been in an "is anybody here a doctor" situation. What happened? My friend has had it happen twice to him, both heart-related in restaurants. Was able to use a defibrillator to save one's life and the other unfortunately passed. Defibrillators don't work if the heart is completely stopped, and CPR is a long shot and didn't work in this case. While we were on our descent, somebody lurched over in their chair and became unresponsive, tachycardic, and diaphoretic. The whole episode lasted for about 2 minutes. Then he woke up and vomited. I figured he had an arrhythmia, and recommended he not take his connecting flight to Cleveland, and instead go to the EMS was waiting on the ground and helped him off the plane. I actually saw him again on my return flight home. He told me he was diagnosed with an arrhythmia, and made an appointment to see a cardiologist in our hometown. Happened in an airplane. Me, as a 4th grade medical student, and my professor at an airplane for going to a medical congress in our country. A man 50-ish years old lost his consciousness. We got there before the cabin crew yelled the situation. Had to do CPR for 25 minutes until we have landed at an airport for emergency landing. We still had a 1.5-hour way, and we also landed off with him to make him reach hospital safely. It was a rural military airport. Airplane waited us to return. Took a 40 minutes later after we landed. Got to our destination. In return flight, we were upgraded to business class and taken from our hotel by a private chauffeur. Happened in an airplane. Me, as a 4th grade medical student, and my professor at an airplane for going to a medical congress in our country. A man 50-ish years old lost his consciousness. We got there before the cabin crew yelled the situation. Had to do CPR for 25 minutes until we have landed at an airport for emergency landing. We still had a 1.5-hour way, and we also landed off with him to make him reach hospital safely. It was a rural military airport. Airplane waited us to return. Took a 40 minutes later after we landed. Got to our destination. In return flight, we were upgraded to business class and taken from our hotel by a private chauffeur. As a 4th grade medical student, and my professor at an airplane for going to a medical congress in our country. A man 50-ish, not a doctor, holed up in a washroom for approximately 20 minutes when a flight attendant inquired if I was okay. Explained the problem. The doctor correctly suggested I was suffering from previously undiagnosed kidney stones. They passed a 2-liter bottle of water into the washroom, and suggested I drink as much as possible. While I didn't pass the stones, the water flushed my kidneys enough to make the balance of the flight bearable. I sought medical attention upon arrival at my destination, but the patient in this scenario, I was on a long. I have a doctorate, but I'm not a medical doctor. But not that kind of doctor. But the man in front of me said that he was. And as he was leaving with the attendant, he said to his wife, "I've been waiting my whole career for this." About 15 minutes later he came back, slightly disgruntled. Turned out a woman in first class was having a panic attack, and she ended up with 3 doctors around her, all frustrated that they didn't get to do an emergency tracheotomy at 35,000 feet. But shortly after receiving my doctorate, I was on a transatlantic flight, and the flight attendant came around asking if any one of us was a doctor. I very briefly, not in the medical profession, but from my time in the military, I knew basic life-saving techniques like CPR and what to do when someone is drowning. That night at the hotel, the kids were in the pool. It was packed. He was swimming in the shallow end. Next thing I know, a girl is holding him, saying, "I think he's drowning." I pulled him from the pool, asked if he could breathe. He shook his head no. I laid him down, rolled him to his side, hit his back. He started throwing up lungfuls of water. Finally he says he can breathe. My wife is freaking out and he is white as a ghost. He threw up probably 4 to 5 times. Worst part is when I pulled him from the pool, my first thought is I'm gonna watch him die. My wife said I reacted so fast that I had to H out of the pool before she realized what was happening. I almost lost my composure when he looked at me and said, "Thanks for saving me, Dad." I recommend, if you can, to take some basic life savings classes. My story involved my son when he was 6 years old. We were in town I'm not a doctor, but I'm a nurse. We need help. Does anyone know CPR? I ran out the door and told these women I was a nurse. They took me to the front lobby where they found a young woman who seemed to have overdosed. She wasn't breathing, but she had a pulse at first. It started to get weaker, then stopped altogether. I had to do 4 rounds of CPR before I felt a pulse again, and it was right as the EMTs were walking in. I work in nursing homes and most people are DNRs. I've never had to do CPR on anybody. It's crazy. That was my first time, and it was at a freaking hotel and not even work. Then you just so happened to ask this question! Exclamation mark. Lol. Just yesterday morning, I heard these women, not a doctor, being a stupid teenager. I was too nervous to do CPR. I was scared if I made the situation worse, or what if he didn't need it? So, yeah.